Periods are not just a monthly inconvenience, they are a window into your overall health. Yet, so many women unknowingly make small mistakes during their cycles that can silently disrupt their hormones, drain their energy, and even impact fertility in the long run. The truth is, your body is always communicating with you, and your period is one of the clearest signals of what's really happening inside. In today's talk, I'm going to walk you through the top 5 period mistakes that are secretly destroying your hormonal balance. More importantly, I'll share simple, science-backed fixes you can start using right away to take control of your cycle, protect your hormones, and feel more confident in your body. If you've ever struggled with painful cramps, irregular cycles, mood swings, or fatigue, this speech is for you because once you understand these common mistakes and how to correct them, you not only improve your period health, but you'll unlock better energy, sharper focus, and long-term hormonal harmony. Period pain is something that millions of women around the world experience every month. And for far too long, it has been brushed aside as something ordinary, something expected, something that women simply have to endure in silence. From the time many young girls get their first period, they are told by friends, by family members, by society at large that cramps and pain are just part of the package, that they are a normal part of being female, that they are something to be tolerated with a heating pad or some over-the-counter medication until they pass. This mindset, this deep cultural conditioning has created generations of women who dismiss their pain, who internalize the belief that their suffering is natural, and who fail to recognize that period pain is not just a monthly inconvenience, but often a signal of deeper hormonal imbalance or underlying health issues. When pain is normalized, the message it sends is that your body's cries for help don't matter, that discomfort and disruption in your daily life are acceptable, and that health can be compromised for the sake of endurance. This is one of the most damaging mistakes women can make because when you ignore pain, you ignore the body's language. And when you silence that voice, you allow problems to grow unchecked. Think about what happens inside the body during the menstrual cycle. The uterus contracts to shed its lining, and mild cramping can be a part of that process. But when pain becomes severe, when it interferes with your ability to walk, work, study, or even rest, when it leaves you curled up on the floor or dependent on heavy painkillers, that is no longer a mild discomfort. That is the body signaling that something is wrong. Conditions like endometriosis, polycystic ovary syndrome, fibroids, or hormonal imbalances can all manifest as severe menstrual pain, and yet too many women dismiss these warning signs, telling themselves that this is just what women go through. In reality, every time that thought is repeated, every time pain is dismissed as normal, an opportunity to identify and treat the root cause slips away. Ignoring this can lead to years of unnecessary suffering, fertility struggles, chronic fatigue, and long-term hormonal chaos that could have been prevented with awareness and timely intervention. The tragedy lies not only in the physical pain, but in the silence that surrounds it. Women are conditioned to carry their discomfort privately, to avoid complaining, to brush it off as part of their role. But what would happen if pain was viewed not as a burden to endure, but as information to act on? Pain is the body's most primal communication tool, the way it signals that something requires attention. When we dull it without asking why it's there, we miss the opportunity to understand the story it is trying to tell. Just as a car's check engine light should not be covered with tape, period pain should not be masked with medication without investigating the underlying cause. Normalizing pain means turning off the alarm while the fire still burns inside, and over time, the damage compounds until the body demands to be heard in more disruptive, more damaging ways. The hormonal system is incredibly delicate, a symphony of signals involving the brain, the ovaries, the thyroid, the adrenal glands, and so much more. When one part of the system is off balance, it ripples through the entire body. Ignoring menstrual pain allows imbalances to persist undetected. For example, high levels of estrogen relative to progesterone can lead to heavy, painful periods, but they can also increase the risk of conditions like endometriosis or fibroids if left unaddressed. addressed. Chronic stress can elevate cortisol, which suppresses progesterone, leading to cycles that are irregular and painful. Yet many women attribute the pain simply to bad luck rather than a stress-driven imbalance. Nutritional deficiencies in magnesium, iron, or vitamin D can intensify cramps, but instead of exploring dietary adjustments, women often just grab another pill bottle. This cycle of suppression rather than exploration not only keeps women in pain, but keeps them disconnected from their bodies. The mental and emotional consequences of this normalization are profound. When women are taught that their pain is expected, they begin to distrust their own experiences. They begin to believe that their voices do not matter, that speaking up about their suffering will only lead to dismissal or ridicule. Many women recall going to doctors with severe period pain and being told that's just how it is, or it's part of being a woman. And so they stop asking for help. They stop advocating for themselves. They stop believing that relief is even possible. This culture of silence perpetuates generational patterns where daughters learn from their mothers that cramps are supposed to hurt, that days in bed are just the reality of being female, and so the cycle continues. Breaking the cycle requires not only medical awareness, but also a cultural shift in how we talk about menstrual health, how we listen to women, and how we validate their experiences. Ignoring period pain as normal does more than perpetuate suffering in the moment. It shapes how women approach their health across their lifetime. When they internalize that pain is normal, they may also internalize that fatigue is normal, that mood swings are normal, that weight struggles are normal, that infertility is simply unfortunate. In other words, they begin to accept dysfunction as part of their identity rather than as signals that can be addressed and improved. Acceptance of dysfunction erodes their quality of life, their relationships, their career performance, and their long-term well-being. A woman in pain who cannot focus at work may miss opportunities, and yet she blames herself instead of the underlying issue. A woman who struggles with intimacy because of pain may feel guilt or shame rather than recognizing that her body is asking for support. This misplaced blame adds another layer of emotional suffering to an already painful condition. From a physiological standpoint, the consequences of ignoring pain accumulate quietly but steadily. Endometriosis, for instance, can take years to diagnose precisely because women normalize their pain. By the time they seek real medical help, the disease may have advanced significantly, making treatment more complicated and outcomes more uncertain. Polycystic ovary syndrome, another common condition linked to painful or irregular cycles, can lead to infertility, diabetes, and cardiovascular issues if left untreated. But its early signs are often dismissed as nothing more than bad cramps or irregularity. Fibroids can cause heavy bleeding and anemia, draining energy and leaving women exhausted month after month. But because many assume this is simply part of their cycle, they do not pursue the treatment that could restore their strength and vitality. These are not small oversights. They are life-altering consequences of a culture that teaches women to minimize their own pain. When you peel back the layers, the deeper truth emerges. Ignoring pain robs women of agency over their health. It keeps them from making informed decisions, from demanding better care, from exploring holistic approaches that could transform their quality of life. It limits them to a reactive model of health rather than a proactive one. Instead of asking, "What is my body telling me?" they are taught to ask, "How can I shut my body up until next month?" That mindset breeds disconnection, and disconnection from the body leads to disconnection from power. But when a woman starts listening, truly listening, she begins to see patterns. She notices how stress worsens her cramps, how sleep improves them, how nutrition plays a role, how exercise makes recovery faster. She starts piecing together the puzzle of her own health, and that is when change begins. That is when she reclaims ownership of her cycle instead of being ruled by it. The silence around period pain does not just harm individuals, it harms entire communities. When women miss school or work because of pain and are told it's normal, opportunities for education and advancement are lost. When women internalize suffering, society loses out on their full potential. Normalization of pain is not just a personal issue, it is a public health issue. The lack of awareness leads to underfunded research, underdiagnosed conditions, and underprioritized resources. for menstrual health. But imagine a world where women's pain was taken seriously, where cycles were tracked and understood, where early intervention was the norm, and where every woman knew that her body signals mattered. That shift would ripple outward, improving not only individual health, but also societal productivity, innovation, and well-being. The journey away from this mistake begins with one simple but powerful shift in mindset, refusing to accept pain as normal. It begins with asking questions, seeking answers, and challenging the narratives that have been passed down for generations. It begins with conversations that validate women's experiences and encourage them to explore solutions. It begins with self-education, with paying attention to the patterns of one's cycle, with recognizing that the body is intelligent and every symptom is a clue. Pain is not the enemy, ignorance is. Pain is the teacher that points us toward healing, but only if we are willing to listen, to learn, and to act. One of the biggest mistakes that destroys hormonal health is relying on quick fixes instead of identifying and treating the root causes of imbalance. It's easy to reach for the most immediate solution, especially when you're in pain, fatigued, or overwhelmed, but quick fixes often create more problems than they solve. Birth control pills, painkillers, sugary comfort foods, caffeine binges, and even over-exercising can feel like short-term relief, but the cost of masking symptoms without addressing the deeper issue is long-term dysfunction in the body. Modern life pushes us toward instant solutions. We live in a culture of convenience where discomfort is not tolerated, and the answer to every problem is expected to be fast and easy. And the body does not heal on demand. Hormones do not balance in an instant. The root of health lies in addressing the causes that create imbalance, not in suppressing the signals that point toward them. When we chase quick fixes, we silence our body's cries instead of honoring them, and this silence becomes the breeding ground for greater suffering. Consider birth control pills, one of the most common quick fixes for menstrual pain or irregular cycles. Many women are prescribed them as the first line of treatment when they report heavy bleeding, severe cramps, acne, or irregularity. The pill can regulate cycles on the surface, reduce pain, and improve skin, but what it actually does is override the natural hormonal rhythm and create an artificial cycle, which does not heal the root cause of painful periods, endometriosis, or polycystic ovary syndrome. Instead, it masks the symptoms and pushes the problem into the background. When women eventually stop taking the pill, the symptoms often return, sometimes worse than before, because the underlying imbalance was never addressed. Worse, long-term reliance on synthetic hormones can deplete the body of vital nutrients like B vitamins, magnesium, and zinc, leaving women even more vulnerable to hormonal instability. The quick fix of the pill becomes a trap, a cycle of dependency that keeps women disconnected from their natural hormonal rhythm. Painkillers are another trap. When cramps strike, the reflex is often to grab a bottle of ibuprofen or another over-the-counter medication. While these drugs can provide temporary relief, they do not address why the cramps are happening in the first place. Excess prostaglandins, inflammatory compounds in the body, are often the root of painful cramps. Instead of working on reducing systemic inflammation through diet, stress management, and lifestyle adjustments, many women take pill after pill, month after month. Over time, heavy reliance on painkillers can damage the gut lining, strain the liver, and disrupt the body's natural healing capacity. Once again, the underlying issue persists, hidden beneath the surface, while the body quietly struggles with mounting imbalances. Sugar is perhaps the most seductive of all quick fixes. When hormones are fluctuating and mood swings hit, when fatigue and cravings dominate the cycle, sugar offers an immediate hit of comfort. It provides a temporary dopamine rush, a fleeting sense of relief, but what it really does is throw the hormonal system into greater chaos. Sugar spikes insulin, and repeated spikes lead to insulin resistance, which directly contributes to conditions like PCOS, weight gain, and disrupted cycles. Excess sugar also fuels inflammation, which worsens cramps, bloating, and fatigue. The quick comfort of sugar is a deceptive trap that deepens the very imbalances it seeks to soothe. Women end up stuck in a loop of craving and crashing, feeding the body fuel that worsens the pain rather than nourishing it toward balance. Stress is another hidden quick fix. Many women push through their cycles with over-exercising, overworking, or ignoring their body's need for rest. Instead of honoring the body's rhythm, they force themselves to keep up with the demands of life, using willpower as a substitute for balance. Cortisol, the stress hormone, rises in response, and when cortisol is chronically elevated, it steals from progesterone, one of the most vital hormones for a healthy cycle. This imbalance between cortisol and progesterone leads to irregular cycles, anxiety, sleep disruption, and worsened PMS. The temporary fix of powering through with adrenaline and caffeine creates long-term hormonal burnout. The body can only be pushed so far before it begins to break down, and when it does, the consequences ripple into every aspect of life. The psychology behind quick fixes is important to understand. Humans are wired to seek relief from pain as quickly as possible, but in doing so, we often choose the path that numbs the symptom instead of resolving the cause. This is reinforced by the medical system, which often prioritizes symptom management over holistic investigation. A woman complains of irregular cycles and she is handed a prescription. Other reports painful cramps and she is told to take a stronger painkiller. Rarely does anyone ask about her stress levels, her nutrition, her sleep, or her lifestyle. Rarely does anyone connect the dots between her symptoms and the deeper dysfunctions within her hormonal ecosystem. This approach teaches women to become passive recipients of quick fixes rather than active participants in their healing. It conditions them to depend on external solutions rather than cultivating awareness and self-care practices that address the true root causes. But the body never lies. Symptoms will always return if the root is not healed. Imagine a tree with diseased roots. You can paint the leaves green, you can cover the bark with polish, but unless you treat the roots, the tree will continue to weaken and decline. The same is true for hormones. Covering the symptoms with pills, sugar, or stress does not fix the root dysfunction. The only way to truly heal is to dig deeper, to nourish the soil, to restore balance at the source. This requires patience, awareness, and a willingness to step away from instant gratification. It requires a different kind of courage, the courage to face discomfort, to investigate it, to embrace it as a teacher rather than silence it as an enemy. The danger of quick fixes is that they create an illusion of control. When the pain subsides after a pill, when the mood lifts after sugar, when the energy spikes after caffeine, it feels as though the problem has been solved. But in reality, the problem is simply hidden, buried beneath layers of temporary relief. This illusion keeps women trapped in cycles of suffering because the relief is short-lived and the symptoms always return. The repeated cycle of relief and relapse erodes confidence, leaving women feeling powerless over their own bodies. Over time, this powerlessness becomes resignation, and resignation is the greatest enemy of healing. When women believe nothing can change, they stop seeking change. When they stop seeking, they stop finding. The cycle continues until the consequences are too great to ignore. Quick fixes also rob women of the opportunity to truly know their bodies. Hormones are a reflection of the inner landscape, a mirror of how the body responds to stress, nourishment, rest, and environment. Every symptom is data, every irregularity is information. By masking these signals, women miss the chance to gather insight, to understand patterns, to build a relationship with their own physiology. The pill, the painkiller, the sugar, the over-exercising, they all drown out the body's voice. But when you stop silencing that voice and start listening, the body reveals its wisdom. It tells you what foods energize you, what stress drains you, what habits throw you off balance, what routines support your rhythm. The root of healing is found not in suppression, but in awareness. There's also a cultural aspect to this mistake. Society rewards quick fixes. Productivity is valued over rest. Appearance is valued over wellness. And silence about menstrual health is encouraged over honest conversations. Women are praised for pushing through their pain, for keeping up with work and responsibilities despite their cycles, for being strong in their suffering. But strength is not found in silence or suppression. Strength is found in awareness, in advocacy, in honoring the body's needs. The glorification of quick fixes is a reflection of a culture that prioritizes output over well-being. But lasting health requires a reversal of this mindset. It requires valuing the root over the surface, the long term over the short term, the process over the illusion. When women learn to shift from quick fixes to root causes, everything changes. Instead of taking a pill for cramps, they begin exploring the role of inflammation and addressing it through anti-inflammatory foods, hydration, and stress management. Instead of reaching for sugar during PMS, they stabilize their blood sugar with balanced meals rich in protein, fiber, and healthy fat. Instead of relying on caffeine to power through fatigue, they begin investigating their sleep, their adrenal health, their thyroid function, and their iron levels. Instead of numbing pain, they ask why it's there, and that question becomes the gateway to healing. Each step away from a quick fix is a step toward empowerment because it shifts responsibility back to the individual, giving her tools and knowledge to work with her body rather than against it. The path of healing is not instant. It requires patience, consistency, and trust in the body's ability to restore balance when given the right environment, but the rewards are profound. Women who step out of the quick fix trap often report not only improved cycles, but also improved mood, energy, clarity, and vitality. They feel more in tune with their bodies, more confident in their choices, more resilient in the face of stress. They begin to see health not as the absence of symptoms, but as the presence of harmony. They begin to recognize that every symptom is a message, and every message is an opportunity to build deeper connection with themselves. In this way, abandoning quick fixes is not just about hormonal health. It is about reclaiming agency, self-respect, and trust in the body's wisdom. When it comes to hormonal health and menstrual balance, two of the most overlooked yet most powerful factors are nutrition and rest. It is almost unbelievable how many women endure painful, irregular, or exhausting cycles while simultaneously underestimating the influence of what they put into their bodies and how they allow their bodies to recover. Hormones are not produced in isolation. They are built, regulated, and supported by the nutrients we consume and the energy we conserve through rest. Every bite of food is either supporting hormonal balance or disrupting it, and every hour of rest is either restoring the system or depleting it. Yet in the rush of daily life, in the constant pursuit of productivity, in the endless demands of work, family, and responsibilities, these two foundations are often sacrificed first. Skipping meals, eating processed convenience foods, relying on caffeine, cutting sleep short, ignoring fatigue, all of these choices compound over time to create cycles that are painful, irregular, heavy, or draining. Nutrition and rest are not luxuries. They are necessities. They are the raw materials and the recovery time that hormones depend on. And when they are neglected, hormonal health inevitably suffers. Think about how hormones are made. They are chemical messengers built from proteins, fats, vitamins, and minerals. Estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone are synthesized from cholesterol, which means healthy fats are not the enemy, but the foundation of hormonal balance. Cortisol, insulin, thyroid hormones, all of them rely on specific nutrients to function properly. Without enough protein, the body struggles to build the structures it needs. Without enough healthy fats, hormone production falters. Without micronutrients like magnesium, zinc, B vitamins, vitamin D, and iron, the body cannot regulate the delicate timing of the menstrual cycle. Yet so many women live on nutrient-poor diets filled with processed carbohydrates, refined sugars, and artificial additives, while lacking the very foods that nourish hormonal health. Breakfast is skipped in the rush out the door. Lunch is replaced with a quick snack bar or a coffee. Dinner is eaten late, often processed and heavy, more about convenience than nourishment. Over time, this pattern leaves the body in a constant state of deficiency, trying to perform complex hormonal functions without the building blocks required to do so. Sugar and processed foods are particularly destructive to hormonal balance. When blood sugar levels spike and crash repeatedly, insulin is forced to surge again and again to bring balance. Over time, the cycle creates insulin resistance, a root cause of polycystic ovary syndrome, and one of the most significant disruptors of regular ovulation. High sugar intake also fuels inflammation throughout the body, worsening cramps, bloating, and mood swings. Processed oils, such as those found in fast food and packaged snacks, add another layer of inflammation, creating an environment where pain and imbalance thrive. Without even realizing it, many women feed their hormones chaos every single day and then wonder why their cycles are chaotic in return. The body reflects what it is given, and if it is given imbalance, it will reflect imbalance. At the same time, nutrient deficiencies intensify the struggles of menstruation. Magnesium, for example, is essential for relaxing the muscles of the uterus, and deficiency can make cramps more severe. Iron is lost during menstruation, and without adequate replacement through iron-rich foods, fatigue, dizziness, and brain fog set in. Vitamin D plays a role in regulating mood and supporting the ovaries, and yet deficiencies are extremely common, especially in women who spend most of their days indoors. Omega-3 fatty acids reduce inflammation and support healthy cell communication, but processed diets are often devoid of them. Every missing nutrient leaves a gap in the hormonal symphony, and every gap creates discord that women experience as pain, irregularity, or exhaustion. Nutrition alone, however, is not enough if rest is neglected. Rest is the time when the body restores itself, when hormones recalibrate, when stress levels are reduced, when tissues repair, when energy is replenished. Without rest, even the best nutrition cannot do its work fully. Sleep deprivation is one of the fastest ways to create hormonal imbalance. When sleep is cut short, cortisol rises, throwing off the delicate balance between stress and reproductive hormones. Melatonin, the sleep hormone, directly interacts with estrogen and progesterone regulation, and when melatonin production is disrupted by poor sleep habits, the menstrual cycle becomes unstable. Inadequate sleep also impairs insulin sensitivity, making it harder for the body to regulate blood sugar and easier to slip into the cycle of cravings and crashes that destabilize hormones further. The body cannot separate the mind's choice to stay up late from the biological consequences of that choice. Every missed hour of sleep is a withdrawal from the bank of hormonal health, and sooner or later that account becomes overdrawn. Rest is not only about sleep, but about slowing down, about giving the body a chance to exhale in a world that constantly demands inhaling. Stress is relentless in modern life, and women often carry the invisible weight of responsibilities that extend beyond work into home, relationships, and caregiving. Without intentional moments of rest, cortisol becomes a constant companion, and as cortisol rises, progesterone falls, leading to cycles that are short, irregular, or filled with premenstrual symptoms. Many women push themselves through their periods as though nothing is happening, expecting the same level of productivity and energy during menstruation as during ovulation, but the body was not designed to operate that way. Hormones fluctuate for a reason, and the menstrual cycle itself is a rhythm that demands different levels of activity and rest at different phases. Ignoring that rhythm in favor of constant output is a recipe for burnout, both physically and hormonally. The cultural narrative that glorifies exhaustion as hard work and dismisses rest as laziness is especially damaging to women's health. Too often, women are celebrated for how much they can juggle, how much they can endure, how little they complain. Rest becomes something earned only after collapse instead of a daily necessity for balance. This narrative keeps women locked in cycles of depletion because the very act of slowing down feels like failure in a society obsessed with constant motion. But the truth is that rest is not weakness. Rest is strategy. Rest is when the body gathers its strength, when hormones reset, when the foundation of resilience is built. Without it, even the best diet, the best exercise, the best intentions cannot prevent the cracks from forming. Neglecting nutrition and rest often begins subtly with small compromises here and there. A skipped meal, a late night, an extra coffee instead of breakfast, a sugary snack instead of protein, a few hours less sleep to finish work. None of these moments seem significant on their own, but health is built on accumulation. Over weeks, months, and years, those small choices stack up into patterns that shape the entire hormonal landscape. What begins as a little fatigue turns into chronic exhaustion. What begins as mild cramps turns into unbearable pain. What begins as an irregular cycle every few months turns into persistent infertility struggles. Women often don't connect the dots until the symptoms become too loud to ignore, but by then the body has been sending signals for a long time. Listening earlier, paying attention sooner could have prevented so much suffering. Listening further could be to prevent public physical damage. Listening earlier could be to prevent pain. And so paying attention sooner, the symptoms surge earlier. Paying attention sooner could have prevented so much suffering. the body is incredibly forgiving when given the chance. Nourishment and rest are not complicated, and the body responds quickly to even small changes. Adding more whole foods, more vegetables, more clean proteins, more healthy fats can transform the cycle in a matter of months. Replacing sugar with stabilizing meals can reduce cravings, mood swings, and bloating. Prioritizing 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep can dramatically reduce PMS symptoms, improve energy, and stabilize emotion. Creating intentional space for rest, whether through mindfulness, gentle movement, or simply saying no to unnecessary demands, can lower cortisol and bring balance back to progesterone. These are not radical interventions. They are foundational choices. They are not about perfection, but about consistency, about recognizing that every meal and every night of rest is an opportunity to build health rather than break it. What makes neglecting nutrition and rest so destructive is not just the physical consequences, but also the message it sends to the body. When you deprive your body of nourishment and recovery, you send the signal that its needs do not matter, that its rhythms are not worth honoring. Over time, this disconnection breeds distrust. The body becomes an obstacle instead of a partner, something to push through instead of something to listen to. This disconnection is the heart of so much hormonal suffering. But when women begin to feed their bodies with intention and allow themselves to rest with compassion, a profound shift occurs. The body responds with gratitude, with balance, with energy. The cycle begins to harmonize. Pain lessens, clarity returns, energy flows. Every choice is an act of communication with your body. Skipping sleep communicates disregard. Eating processed junk communicates neglect. But nourishing foods communicate care. Rest communicates respect. And when the body feels cared for and respected, it responds with health. This is not about perfection, not about rigid rules or impossible standards, but about remembering that the basics, what you eat and how you rest, matter more than any quick fix, more than any expensive supplement, more than any temporary relief. They are the ground upon which everything else is built. Without that ground, no other intervention can stand strong.